Before we talk a little bit about stress and trauma, see that shaking guy there, we're actually all going to take a moment just to connect with one another and say, let's do a little nonverbal connecting. So I'm going to invite you to take a piece of paper. It can be a Post-it note, it can be a piece of lined paper, computer paper, whatever you might have handy, and just tear a corner off of it. We don't need a very large piece of paper right now. So I'm going to invite you just to create a smaller piece. And then to go ahead and grab some kind of a drawing utensil. It can be a pencil, it can be a marker, whatever you have handy. What I'm going to invite you to do now is just do a little check-in drawing, right? So how are you today, or how are you right now? So using lines, shapes, and colors, if you have a variety of colors, you can do that, or if you just have one, that's fine as well. Okay, so again, just using lines, shapes, and colors, we're only going to take probably less than a minute to do this activity. And so I'll give you a little quiet time to do that now. I invite you to draw a simple little drawing. It can be abstract, it can be figurative, so you can draw an emoji or you can draw lines if you prefer. And just take a couple more seconds to finish that up. And if you would like to, you may add a word, you don't have to. And now I'm going to invite everybody to hold up their drawing. And if you haven't already, you may like to put it in grid mode so that you can see everybody. And there's actually 3 screens worth of people here. So go ahead and hold it up in a way that you can still see your computer screen, but also hold up your drawing at the same time. I see a lot of similarities. So take your time, feel free to scroll through. Take a look at everybody's. You may want to unmute your video or keep it muted if you'd prefer to. That's fine as well. If you just want to do this at home and not share it, that's perfectly fine. So just a few words now using your chat bar, maybe 1, 2, or 3 words. What was that experience like for you? Either just to do the little check-in, the little check-in drawing, or what was it like to share it and to see everybody else's drawing? So interesting, relaxing, reflective, forces me to be more reflective and assess how others are feeling. Fun. Thank you for your feedback. Agitated, easygoing, focus, calming. Now I know why I have students who pick up their colors during my teaching. Yeah, so it's a really quick, and you can see a lot of helps me to see others. Yes. You know, it gives a really quick way to assess what you're dealing with also as teachers, as counselors, that you can quickly take the temperature of the room, see what kids are coming in with. You get a lot, you know, the saying, a picture is worth, is it 1,000 words, 5,000 words? I don't know, I'd say 1,000,000 words, right? That a picture is worth a lot of words. And so you can get a lot of information fairly quickly about how your students or how your clients are doing. It takes less than a minute to do. Most of the techniques and tools today that I'm offering have timeliness in mind. They should not take a lot of time. That said, if you're an art instructor and you want to expand on or lengthen any of these, you can make them activities that, you know, layer on top of one another, or you add a haiku to it. And I'll get into some examples of that a little bit later on. But for the most part, these are things that you can do fairly quickly. Reflective, cool way to relieve math anxiety and communicate common concerns. Yes, so one thing that I hope that you saw were similarities. And so it's a nice way for individuals to also see, oh, look, other people drew something that I did, or, oh, look, I'm feeling this way as well. And you can, this was a very open-ended prompt, which was just, how are you feeling right now? You could be more specific. Today we have a math quiz. Take 5 seconds and do a little line shape drawing about how you're feeling right now about the math quiz. And you can even do a pre and a post if you would like to. Okay. So here's a little illustration of that fight, flight, freeze response. So right there in the middle, we have our zone of regulation. And some of you may, or a lot of you may already be familiar with this idea. that when we go into fight or flight, the heart is pounding, is pumping blood throughout the body in order to oxygenate our muscles and get us ready to run or to fight off a perceived threat. If we can't do either of those, and that part of our brain that is trying to protect us instinctually assesses that it's hopeless, then we go into a freeze state, right? And what that looks like in the classroom or with clients is arguing, running out of the classroom, avoiding, freezing might be drifting off, looking away, zoning out, crawling under the table. It might look like depression, and it's sort of that state of hopelessness. And so what the creative arts can do is bring us back into that zone of regulation where we are neither fighting nor fleeing nor freezing, but that we can operate in the sense of safety. Okay. So why art? So this is what we've been talking about, of course, this whole time. So I like to think of a couple acronyms. I don't go into this a lot here, but I wanted to give you the acronym TLC to start with, okay? So why art? TLC. So T stands for home turf. Art is on their home turf. Talking's on our home turf. Okay, so if we connect with kids around the creative arts, we're really operating from a stance that they're more used to, familiar with, and comfortable with. Okay, L stands for lowering defenses. If you ask a kid to come here and talk, if I ask my husband to come here and talk, he gets defensive. Okay, he immediately thinks something's wrong. Okay, if we really ask anybody, come here, I need to talk to you, our defenses go up. If we say, come here, I want to show you something, our defenses tend to go down. Okay, so just the invitation alone to do something creative, even if it has the same end goal, lowers our defenses. Okay, and then C is that it connects us to each other, and it connects the thinking brain to the emotional brain, which is what we've been talking about here. Okay, today we're going to focus on the acronym CALM. All right, C stands for containing emotions. A stands for altering images, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. L is letting go and laughter, and M is being mindful. All right, we're going to talk about each of these in turn. So here on the right, you see an illustration for containing emotions. This is an activity that has many different variations and many different adaptations. This right here was done with my with one of my own kids, in order to connect. So one hand is mine, the other hand is my child's. The child gave me, my child wanted to overlap. We drew little lines and then we doodled inside, okay? So this was done very quickly as sort of a symbol of our connection. I was having to leave for work and it gave them something to do while I was transitioning to my work mode out of mommy mode, right? And so mommy, can we do this? Or can you play with me? Can you do this? I need a snack, I need this. And I said, no, but we can do a drawing together, a joint drawing. And so we traced our hands overlapping each other. So that was how I did it at home. This can also be done virtually with that shared whiteboard where you just draw over your hand and have them overlapping. You can also have a child just do this with their own hand by themselves. If, for example, a child is needing to wait for instructions, if they're finished, they can do this on their own as an activity. And you can either prompt them to put any type of doodle inside of the hand, like I've done here, or you can be more specific. So, for example, and this is what I'm going to invite you to do with me right now, which is to go ahead and draw your hand on a piece of paper, and then we're going to add lines to break up the hand. And then finally, since we're talking about stress today, stress and anxiety or worries, to doodle inside the hand with any stresses or worries that you may be experiencing right now. Okay, it's my very large hand. I didn't want to get marker on my hand, so I went really far outside my fingers. Okay. And then I'm going to add some squiggle lines. If somebody didn't want to do their hands, you can just draw a circle, a heart, a triangle. If you're familiar with Zentangles, this is similar to a Zentangle. If you don't know what a Zentangle is, don't worry about it. You can Google it later. All right, so I've added some lines here to break up the hand. So you can go ahead and do that now. And then finally, and you don't need to add, fill in all of the sections. We probably won't have the time to do that right now, but we will return to this drawing later and add more to it later. So maybe pick, 3 or 4 sections right now and go ahead and think about something or some things that may be stressful. And then consider how you might represent that, again, using lines or shapes. And just take a few more moments. Like I said, we'll return to this drawing later and add some more to it. So as you're finishing that up, or finishing up this portion of it, I'm going to talk a little bit more about containment. Okay, so art, we find, tends to contain emotions. It also contains thoughts. And what I mean by that is that when we're thinking something, for example, somebody's ruminating, right? Thoughts are just swirling around and around and around, or we're feeling these feelings and we can't see them and we can't do anything with them. Well, hopefully we learn how to do things with them, right? Which is why we have different tools and strategies, right? But when a child is experiencing something in here, or thoughts are rolling around in here, right? It's very hard to know what to do with them. But when we can externalize them and give them a physical form, as we do in the visual arts, or any other kind of form, we could also call, music and movement, other types of physical forms, we're able to put that someplace that can almost literally physically hold it in a way. And it's remarkably powerful and effective when we can, like I said, I'll use that word again, externalize an emotion or externalize a thought, and have it held some space for us on a piece of paper in a physical box. And I'll go into other things like boxes and such later on. Okay, that is someplace that it can stay, and that we can go back to, and that children can even visualize, and adults can visualize putting things in boxes and containers, for example, or like we've just done with this activity, that we can create some sort of containment with the outline of a shape, and then put some of those stresses inside of it to be held, okay? And that provides a little bit of space and alleviation from the feelings and thoughts being inside the mind and inside the body, right? It's kind of like when they say, if you're thinking a lot of things at night, write it down so you don't have to keep thinking about it. It kind of calms the brain. It's a similar principle, right? The next step then, and we'll get into this a little bit later, is once it's externalized and contained, then we can manipulate it. Then we can also do something with it, because now we can physically see it, right? But then we can transform it and alter it and add to it, right? In a way that we couldn't do if it's just a sort of this feeling or thought that we can't really see or grasp, okay? So art offers the important opportunity to explore the boundaries between self-expression and self-containment. So I'm going to invite you to take your hand back out that we started with earlier. And if you have another color, feel free to use another color. If you don't, that's fine. And think about some internal resources or external. So you can add outside of the hand if you would like to, in order to represent things in your environment or people around you who are supportive. Or you can draw inside the hand for your internal resources. And we're going to sort of intermingle those around the other doodles you already did that represented your stress. Okay, so just take a couple moments to do that now. And I didn't do this today, but sometimes what I do during my workshops is when I start with an activity like this, and maybe make it more generic, such as simply just doodling rather than thinking about stressors. What I might do is actually invite participants to feel free to use this as something to doodle on during the duration of the workshop, if that helps them to listen. I know a lot of you probably have students who benefit from dual attention activities so that they can engage in sort of mindless activities such as doodling or fidgeting in order to help them pay better attention to what you're saying or what you're teaching at the time. And so sometimes I do start my workshops up by inviting people to use this as a tool during the duration of the time together. So that's another adaptation if you'd like to use it in that way as well. All right, let's take a couple shares in the chat bar. Returning to this activity and adding your strengths and your resources. What did you notice? Faith and friendships. Yeah, Leslie, was it a different experience for you this time? With the addition of the skills or the strengths?
Yes, and as I looked at it a little more, I took some of the artwork that I filled in on the hand, and I actually put word labels to it, like what would that represent to me? And then, yeah, I kind of struggled a little bit with the resources, but I realized that I don't actually have a lot of resources, but the resources that I have a lot of quality. So, yeah, that was something I recognized.
Yeah, great. Great. Thank you for that share. Also, you can, and again, you can expand on this. You can have people assign colors to different resources and actually think about how much space they take up or how little space. I mean, you can really get much more detailed into the instructions here. Adding strengths and resources gave me pause to think. It was easier to come up with external resources compared to internal resources. Yep. Another observation. And being thankful. Yeah. I like to say it's like our first aid kit, right? We want to know where our first aid kit is. If you have an injury, you want to know where the gauze is, where the bandage is, where the hydrogen peroxide is, right? Same with emotional first aid. We need to know where our internal resources are located and how to access them when we need them. Because it's when we're in crisis or when we're dysregulated that it's hardest to really know where things are or access them. So that in order to identify them ahead of time so that we know where they are when we need them and how to access them when we need them, right? So sometimes in my clinical work, I'll even invite people to assign a color and then to embody it, imagine where it is in the body. So then we can go back to it and find it when they need it. So if they become dysregulated, I might say, for example, can we find that yellow that was in your heart? Yes. Okay. Can we bring that in now? Right. That's a little bit more of a sophisticated when we go into embodying these images. Right. Reminded I have several close by resources available to me, and I needed that reminder.